Alrighty, now we're going to start the second segment of the last episode. So, for a real estate agent, we work with both buyers and sellers who are either friends, families, or referrals. So, thank you in advance for anybody who wants to send me any referrals. The buyer's process will start with you meet with the buyer, go over their needs. And then once you kind of get that established, if they do not have a lender and are not paying with cash, we refer them out to a lender to get a pre-approval, because it's very important that we have that prior to shopping for homes. After that, then we start the home search process, and we like to set up people on client portals within their price range, what they're comfortable with, either, where they're going to be making their payments at, or if they're paying with cash, what they're comfortable with paying cash overall. You kind of don't want to go over their comfort zone unless it is more of a buyer's market and we can negotiate a little bit more. So after we get their portal subscription all set up, determine whether that's for a residential home, land, or multifamily. You also want to make sure that before viewing any properties as an agent, we get the buyer representation form signed, which is a new requirement. And then once they start getting going on that and find homes that they want to check out, the agent will set up the showing times and the driving route, which is kind of a lengthy process, and it's really fun to figure out when you remove something from a list of 10 to 15 homes. So always pack snacks in your car and waters for those clients. Once they do find a home that they love, and it doesn't have to be a forever home. A lot of people will sometimes, try to shop for their forever home. But again, on average, 5 to 7 years, kind of that max for people being in a home. So, just find a home that suits them. Don't feel forced into any home, of course. But then we go for the offer process, and you fill out the offer disclosures, go over all the documentation that's needed for that home, especially for if they have, septic. You want to make sure you have all the proper disclosures for those. And then when you submit an offer, you're going to have your negotiation period, of course. So that's going to take a day or so to go back and forth on negotiations. Once that offer is accepted, then you have your inspection period and the review of disclosures and title reports, which is also another section for possible negotiations for either repairs or price if something's found during that inspection period, or say, the roof was leaking or it's older than expected. So yeah, there's lots of different stages where there can be negotiations on offer. So it's not just the first time that that's going to be your hard price. Unless it's a cash deal, then it's probably a hard price if there's nothing wrong with the home. And then after that, they'll go through the appraisal period, which are required with loans, but could be waived if you're paying cash if you want a quicker close and don't want to have to deal with that. And then also for a buyer purchasing a home with a loan, that's another potential negotiation period. If that appraisal didn't come in at value and it came below, then there's renegotiations there as well too. And then if everything's good towards the end and then it's closed, and that's the best day for a buyer and the agent. A lot of the times your agent's gonna also be there, nights, weekends, all late hours. I've had phone calls at midnight. I try not to answer, but sometimes do wake up and think I'm missed my alarm. I've had that before. So kind of like a, therapist, friend, whatever the buyer or seller needs at the time is kind of what hat we put on. So then for the seller's process, it's kind of similar. You meet with the seller who's either friend, family, or a referral. If it's somebody that is a referral or calls you out and to have an orientation so they can interview you and you get to interview them as well. Then you go through and let them know your processes, your steps. And a lot of times there's a lot of negotiation there too, because, somebody may want a higher, pay less of a commission to a seller's agent. And then you're going to not give them all the tools you can provide for them. But if they want to pay what you feel that your commissions should be with the certain things, say that you want to do a full staging for 3 months and the agent to cover that, you'll probably be paying a higher commission towards that agent. Or if you want the home pre-inspected, which is kind of a good thing to do, the sellers can also pay for those out of their pocket and save that on them. So they wouldn't have to pay that for the commissions, or they can work something out to where it's kind of covered half and half. So there's negotiation period there too when you're shopping for different agents. And it's always good to make sure that you're shopping for an agent that fits you and you're comfortable with working with. Or if you just want to, that business relationship, then it could be business. If you want a friend relationship, it could turn into a friendship, unless you guys are already friends. Once you meet and the seller decides to go with you, then you'll go over the property information and review the property with them and do a walkthrough and kind of make suggestions. After going over, the paperwork and disclosures, make suggestions on if they should get the home staged or do a home inspection prior. Go over anything that they might be aware of that should probably be fixed prior to listing the home. So also with a home inspection, if you do that, which is, I would recommend, just because it saves you peace of mind from having that whole negotiation period and possible contract falling through with a buyer if something major did pop up. Then you can get it repaired ahead of time and have it market ready. After staging and photos, then you go live with the property on a date that works for your sellers. So once you are running comparables, and to get that to the sellers, you're going to want to make sure, well, we as agents make sure that you're comparing the home with other like homes and the overall market where everything's at, because that kind of determines where buyers are going to be at too, especially in a buyer's market. So it's really going to depend on a lot of different factors, whether your home backs to a main highway or you have a shared driveway or you don't. You have your yard isn't this as similar as some other yards. So there's lots of different factors that go into it. Also, newer construction versus an older home, you're going to have to take that into factors too. Once the property is live, then you typically have broker tours set up, open houses. The agent will be there to schedule showings and get the property viewed. And then you'll go through the same kind of buying process for that we've talked about with the buyer's process. And then once it's closed, then it's a happy day for the sellers as well too. There's lots of different things that can happen in a transaction that affects both the buyers and sellers. And it's kind of just gonna depend on, who the buyer is and who the seller is, if they want to continue moving forward. If, and then an agent's going to be there to help refer over contractors and subcontractors to work with for, if, something as small as needing the windows washed to as big as needing a roof repair done, or the underneath of the home structure beefed up, because that's been there too. So, or mold remediation contractors. So your agent is going to be somebody that helps with all of those things, and is there as you're confident throughout the process, and somebody you trust and can rely on, that's not going to be trying to get you into something that you can't afford and you're not comfortable with. You should really vet who you want to work with, because they should be working for you, not for the commission. And if it, in the end of the day, something doesn't sell, they shouldn't be upset about it. And, as an agent, because they're there to help you. And ultimately, we as agents want to make sure that when you're buying or selling, that you're comfortable, because that is a major decision that you're making, and it's very financially tied. So it's a very stressful process for people. But other than that, I don't think there's much else in our process that I probably didn't. I mean, there's probably things I didn't touch on, but we'll probably hit those when we're going through our other episodes.
Yeah, so if you get an accepted offer, the time frame between accepted offer and the day you get your keys is generally 30 to 45 days.
Yeah.
Unless you're cash.
Or somehow an appraisal comes in quick and you're able to rush it through in a shorter amount of time.
Yeah, it could be less than that. And so my question for you, because I didn't touch on how I get paid. I only get paid based on the loan amount. I can't raise up an interest rate and get paid on that like they used to do back in the deceptive lending days. But things changed for realtors recently. So if they're a buyer and listening, how do they pay you, and do they pay you?
There's that's what is on the buyer's representation form and agreement. They can either pay the commission of the agent, or the agent can always try to negotiate that into the purchase price, which is kind of still standard in today's market. There are still some lenders, or not lenders, some sellers that will make that another negotiation period. So if you have a contract where, say, your buyer's agreement is for a 3%, but that seller is only going to pay 2%, 2.5%, then that's kind of up to the agent if they want to try to renegotiate that other 1.5% with their buyer, or if they would take a lower commission depending on how easy or hard the sell is. So ours are all, still up for negotiation. It's kind of hard, even though, you'd like to get paid hourly, but in our industry, you get paid on the risk.
Yeah, once the deal closes, we get paid.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think for a first-time home buyer to come up with 2 to 3% is a lot. And so historically, the sellers were responsible to pay for the buying agent commission, and that changed recently. So it put a lot of fear into buyers that they weren't going to be able to buy a house. But I think a lot of sellers just realized that if they're not willing to still pay the buyer's agent commission, that's going to close out like 75% of potential buyers.
Yeah, because most buyers out there right now are buying with a loan. Not everybody has cash.
Yeah, and I think it is the seller personally, you always forget that you have to pay those commissions, and so you think you're going to get all this equity back. But if you're using agents or they have a buyer agent, you've got to keep that in mind before you get ready to sell.
Yeah, and what I like to do when I meet with potential sellers is kind of go over commissions right off the bat when we're talking and discussing their home, just because I want to make sure that they're aware of not only the percentage that they pay to myself and or potentially the buyer's agent, but also there's a little bit of title fees as well that are going to be in their loan as well. Or the sell, sorry. Yeah. So I think we've touched on everything on the agent side, but if there are any questions, please reach out. There's never a dumb question, and if something wasn't fully understood, just reach out via text, email, or chat box,